Welcome to Discover with Dr. Dan, the Proactive Health Podcast. Today we're going to talk about natural products and plants as medicines and drugs. With us today is Professor David Kingston, a university distinguished professor from Virginia Tech and a well-known expert in the field of natural products. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. So I'm going to introduce you, David, so our listeners know your background and credentials.
Sure.
So David Kingston was born in London, UK, and received his BA degree in natural sciences in 1960 and his PhD degree in 1964, both from Cambridge University. His PhD advisors were the Nobel laureate, Lord Todd, and Dr. D.W. Cameron. After postdoctoral appointments at MIT and Cambridge, he moved to the USA, where he is currently a university distinguished professor in the Department of Chemistry at Virginia Tech. David's research is focused on the studies of natural products for medicinal usefulness with cancer and malaria as particular targets. David was the first chemist in the United States to study the chemistry of the natural product paclitaxel, which is marketed as Taxol and is widely used to treat breast and ovarian cancer. He has prepared hundreds of derivatives of paclitaxel, including several with improved activity compared with the parent compound, and he has provided experimental confirmation of the proposed T-Taxol tubulin-binding conformation of paclitaxel. A significant validation of this conformation was the synthesis of compounds that owe their improved activity to being constrained to the T-Taxol conformation. David is the founding director of the Virginia Tech Center for Drug Discovery, or VTCDD. This center was officially chartered by Virginia Tech in 2012. Its aims are to provide a visible presence in the drug discovery area at Virginia Tech to attract support from industry, foundations, and private donors to foster joint-funded research projects among its members, to provide centralized resources for shared use, and to strengthen graduate and undergraduate active learning in drug discovery. David has received many honors and awards, including the Research Achievement Award of the American Society of Pharmacognosy in 1999, the Virginia Scientist of the Year Award in 2002, and the ACS Gunther Award in the Chemistry of Natural Products in 2008. In addition to his scientific work, David serves as one of the several lay pastors in his local church, the Blacksburg Christian Fellowship. So David, again, it's amazing to have you here. Your credentials show to our listeners that you are a well-known expert in this field. And so let's get into our discussion. So David, how did you get into studying natural products as medicines for your career?
Well, that's an interesting story. As you told the audience, I was a student at Cambridge University. In my senior year there, one of the courses of lectures I took was by Lord Todd, who was the professor of chemistry there, and was a world-famous natural products chemist himself, Nobel Prize winner, and so on. And that really thrilled me, just his explanations of natural products, their biological activities, the work he had done. A lot of the lecture was on his work. So I got really turned on to natural products by those lectures. I then went to see him to inquire about doing graduate work with him, and he was willing to take me. And so that was how I got started in the natural products area from a personal point of view. Okay. The other aspects are that I love the complicated structures of natural products. As an organic chemist, I was well aware of a lot of fairly boring looking synthetic compounds, compounds sort of flat structures like compound derivatives of benzene. And those didn't particularly excite me, but the complicated three-dimensional structures of natural products really were exciting to me as almost like a topological exercise. So we began working. I began working with Professor Todd on aphid pigments, which turned out to be a really interesting project. No real biological activity, unfortunately, but nevertheless a very interesting project with lots of good chemistry involved.
Okay.
The other motivation I'll just share with you is that, as you shared, I'm a Christian and one of the local pastors of our church here, and was even then was aware of a lot of interest in natural products as part of God's creation. Johannes Kepler, you may have heard of him, the great German astronomer of the 16th century,
right?
Was the discoverer of the laws of planetary motion. And he was quoted as saying he was thinking God's thoughts after him as he studied the heavens. And in my small way, I felt that studying nature, I was also studying God's thoughts after him. So there's that aspect too. So they all came together and turned me on, if that's the right word, to natural products.
Wonderful. So in regards to natural products, tell a little bit about the history of these compounds from plants and their use as pharmaceutical drugs.
Oh, that's a really long story. I could spend an hour talking to you about that, but obviously I won't. But I just mentioned a few of the highlights. Compounds that I'm sure most of your listeners will know about. Morphine, for example, still the best pain reliever we have, even though it has very serious side effects, is a natural product, a plant product. Quinine, the first anti-malarial drug that really changed history in many ways, is, of course, a natural product. You have more recent examples, the vinca alkaloids, which are anti-cancer agents. And just a personal note there, one of my graduate students had Hodgkin's disease and was actually treated and cured from Hodgkin's disease by a regimen of chemicals, of drugs, which included one of the vinca alkaloids. And then the other one that you already mentioned is Taxol, or paclitaxel. Taxol is a trademark, but Taxol is arguably the most famous natural product of the 20th century. It really revolutionized cancer treatment. My son-in-law is an oncologist, and he told me there were oncologists speak of the pre-Taxol days and the post-Taxol days as like a watermark, or a watershed rather, in the treatment of cancer. So that was really important natural product. There are, of course, other natural products that are not plant-derived. Everybody's heard of penicillin, a wonderful antibiotic that comes from microorganism. And there are many other microorganisms that produce really important medicines as well. And just a final comment on this, just a paper came out last year in 2020 by Bill Gerwick on natural products as agents against the coronavirus. And it was like a review article that really pointed out how important natural products could be in treating things like the coronavirus that we're still suffering from today. So they're really, really important is all I can say there.
Wow. I remember reading a paper, a natural products review paper, where they say that 50% of anti-cancer drugs and 30% of all pharmaceutical drugs are either, directly from plants or derivatives, starting from a compound in a plant.
Yeah, no, that's true. That paper was written by two good friends of mine, Gordon Craig and Dave Newman, and they've done a wonderful job of searching the literature. And yes, indeed, many of our drugs owe their origin to natural products, up to half, depending on how you calculate it.
Wow, amazing. So obviously, natural products are important from plants. There's a need, and in your amazing career, where has been the most interesting place in the world for you to study natural products?
I think I really need to tell you about two places. We started, I've collected natural products, or rephrase it, I've actually worked with natural products from all over the world. But I've actually been involved in collection of natural products in only two places. One is Suriname, and the other is Madagascar. Suriname is the former Dutch Guyana. It's a small country on the sort of northeast rim of South America, next door to Guyana and to French Guyana. And it is where we chose to begin our work with a new program called an International Cooperative Biodiversity Group. And this is a group funded by the National Institutes of Health and other government organizations to promote drug discovery and also biodiversity conservation in countries like Suriname. And we were fortunate in getting funded to work there. We worked there for 10 years. And did a lot of very interesting chemistry, a lot of difficulties working in a country without a big infrastructure like Suriname. Had its complications, but we were able to surmount those and discovered some rather interesting compounds. One, it never has not become a drug, but it has created a lot of interest in the chemical community and the biological community, a thing called ipamoiacin. And we did a lot of work with that. We also were very fortunate in working with a group called Conservation International and another group from the Missouri Botanical Garden. And they did all the plant collections for us in that country. And one aspect of the Conservation International work that really stands out in my mind is that the Suriname is a small country, not many resources. It's 90% forest. Just the 10% by the coast is developed, but most of the interior is in forest. And there were proposals to do logging in the interior, which would have really devastated the interior and also harmed the tribal communities that were living there, essentially untouched for hundreds of years. And so Conservation International was able to generate funding to propose combining 3 national parks into one big area called the Central Suriname Nature Reserve. And that was really a wonderful achievement. And it was achieved by Conservation International. But our part in that was really to provide an argument for that conservation. And the argument being is if you don't conserve these species, you're going to lose them. And you may then lose the potential for drug discovery from those species. And so it was a win for conservation and a potential win for drug discovery down the road. So that was Suriname. Would you like to hear about Madagascar now?
We would love to.
Okay, so after Suriname, we moved to Madagascar. I think everybody knows where that is, off the coast of Southeast Africa. A wonderful island, unique history. I don't have time to go into that, but it's a place that severely damaged its ecosystem over hundreds of years. And this is not just recent history, but ever since the island was settled in the early years of the first millennium AD, it was settled from peoples coming from basically Indonesia and places like that.
Okay.
And they grew up there, and because they needed fuel for fires and so on, the forests were gradually cut down. So over hundreds of years, those forests have mostly gone. But we're able to work there, and we had some good achievements there. We had, again, a compound we discovered there has been linked to potential clinical trials for cancer drug.
Okay.
John Butler at the National Cancer Institute is actually heading that up. We discovered a compound. He also discovered similar compounds, and he took over the leadership of that project.
Okay.
But we also had some conservation successes there. We worked with corporate funders, Eastside Inc. and Dow AgroSciences were actually our partners in that work. They provided funding to do a lot of good conservation work in Madagascar. So we built a school there. We built a bridge over a river gorge to serve people there. We did other infrastructure projects. And then also, in collaboration with Conservation International and Missouri Botanical Garden, we're able to establish a protected area. The Montagne Francais is a wonderful, pristine area in the northern part of Madagascar. And that was made a protected area thanks to the work of primarily Conservation International and a group called SAGE, which is a Madagascar conservation group. They did the lion's share of that work. And so that was really a win for the people of Madagascar, a win for the country. And I think it's an achievement we look back on with some satisfaction.
Wow, that's amazing. It's interesting. I love the conservation work that you're doing because, as you said, Mother Nature and plants in Mother Nature and the oceans and whatnot contain amazing natural products with the potential for medicinal use, and we need to preserve those. So Mother Nature's secrets can be there for us to discover to benefit mankind.
Absolutely.
Oh, beautiful.
And plants are particularly vulnerable because of development assets. Continued development, we're losing biodiversity, losing marine biodiversity too, but it's not as obvious perhaps as the plant losses we're seeing.
Right. Well, and it's amazing the work that you did as well, right? It's corporate social responsibility. As you're working with these nations, you're doing things also to help them. And that's beautiful. So you're combining science and quality of life and service. So that's amazing.
Yeah, it was a very nice program to be involved in. And I take my hat off also to the conservationists who did almost all that work and to our funders, Dow AgroSciences and Eastside both gave generous funding to do conservation work. So that was really important.
Oh, that's amazing.
To the project.
Wonderful. So, David, you have 2 plant species named after you. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, sure, yeah. So one of them came out of the Suriname project. I mentioned we worked with Missouri Botanical Garden, and one of the key people there was a man called Jim Miller. He's now the head of research at Missouri Botanical Garden, but we were working with him. He's a great partner. And so we became good friends. And he was doing botanical work in Suriname and also in neighboring countries.
Okay.
And I think it was actually in Brazil, he found a new species of a cordia plant. It's a fairly common plant, but it's sort of a new species of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you discover a new species, you have the privilege of naming the plant.
Right.
And so he chose to honor me by naming it Cordia kingstonii. And so that's how I got that particular plant named after me.
Wow.
And the other one was I've worked a lot in Taxol, as we may talk later about that if you want to, but we did a lot of work on Taxol. One of my colleagues who were doing work on the plants that Taxol comes from, the taxa species,
right,
also discovered a new taxa species. And again, we're friends, and he was kind enough to name that after me. So that became Taxus kingstoniana.
Wow.
So friendship is a big part of this. So I had nothing personal to do with the naming. They were gifts by my friends.
Wow. That's awesome. So what do you think is the future of finding natural products from nature with medicinal properties?
I think it's still a very bright future. It's not an easy task to do this because, particularly with plants, there have been obviously over hundreds of years, there have been many, many investigations. And so it requires increasing sophistication, increasing ability to work on very small quantities of material because plant resources are precious.
Right.
But those are available today. Instrumentation to determine structures increases every year. It seems to get better and, of course, more expensive.
Right.
But we can do that. And so I think the potential for new plant discoveries, there's new natural products from plants, is still very, very positive. I'm also excited by the sort of work that Bill Fennicle is doing. I know you had Bill Fennicle on a previous podcast.
Right.
And he's doing really exciting work looking at marine sediments as sources of natural products. And then the third way of doing this is by looking at making unnatural natural products. And this is how you take a microbial species, for example, and by genetic modification, you can coax it into producing compounds that it does not produce normally. And these are still natural products. They're still produced by the microorganism, for example, but they have different structures and therefore different chemical properties. So one other reason I think I'm excited about with natural products is because they come from nature, they are made ultimately by enzymes. Enzymes in the biosynthetic machinery of the plants or the microorganisms are the key factors that produce these natural products. And enzymes are three-dimensional things. They're not just flat structures. And so the molecules they make, they have this three-dimensional capacity, a three-dimensional shape. One of the things that got me excited about natural products in the first place. Because they're three-dimensional, they fit quite well into other three-dimensional things like receptors in the cell or other enzymes that you might want to inhibit. So as natural products have a built-in advantage as drugs compared with flat molecules, which are the sort of things that synthetic chemists can make by the hundreds, but they may not be that good as compounds. They do a lot of development work to turn those into drugs.
Right.
So natural products have a built-in advantage, and I'm a great fan, obviously, of natural products for that, among other reasons.
Yeah, I am as well. Awesome. So, David, what are your thoughts on natural products related to the COVID pandemic that has swept the earth?
So I haven't looked in closely at this, but I did mention this paper by Bill Gerwick that just came out a month or two ago, I think it was, certainly in 2020, published in the Journal of Natural Products. If your readers have the ability to search, if you search for Gerwick, that's Gerwick, and Journal of Natural Products 2020, you'll probably find the paper. And it's a paper where he reviews the importance of natural products as potential inhibitors of viruses, including the coronavirus.
Okay.
And I just got the paper a couple of days ago. I haven't had a chance to read it in detail, but it clearly sets the tone that, yes, there are natural products out there that have the potential to treat things like viral infections, and we need to be looking at those to use them to the best advantage.
Wonderful. I look forward to reading that paper and then sharing that source with our listeners so that they can learn more about that if they're interested. Wonderful, David. It's been a delight talking with you to hear your wonderful career about natural products, about their use in medicine, their history, your exploits in Madagascar and Suriname and other places studying plants, and talking about the conservation of plants. So with that, what final thoughts would you give our listeners about what we've talked today or other points that you want to bring across?
So the only other point I'd make, I think, at this stage is that just because a product is a natural product doesn't automatically mean it's good for us to take. There are many examples of natural products that are highly toxic.
Right.
And so I'm sure your readers are much too sophisticated, or your hearers are too sophisticated to worry about this. But
Right.
Just don't be deluded by a claim that because something is natural, it's good. It's important that these things be tested properly and be declared safe and able to be taken safely. Don't just assume that you can take some plant and eat it, it'll be good for you. That's certainly not the case. So natural products, many, many good, very important natural products, absolutely. But there are also some very toxic things out there. I just want to leave your readers and your hearers with just an awareness of that fact.
Right. Well, and that's a great point, because there's a lot of, botanical materials and other things going around. And there are health benefits that are touted and masqueraded around, but there's no really hard science behind it. So that's a great point, right? That's just because it's natural doesn't mean that it's going to be beneficial without the legitimate scientific research behind it.
Absolutely. That's a very important point. Yeah,
wonderful.
Absolutely.
Well, David, it's sure been a delight having you on the show. Our listeners have learned a lot. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Dan. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and best wishes to you.
You too as well, my friend. So thank you for everyone for listening. Sure appreciate it. I hope you all have a wonderful week wherever you are and whatever you're doing. Thank you. This is Dr. Dan signing off. The information presented by guests in this podcast is their sole opinion and in no way represents the views of Discover with Dr. Dan, the Proactive Health Podcast, or Brilliant. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not replace professional medical care. Please consult with your medical doctor before making any changes in your lifestyle.